And we are live with a minute to spare.
Ooh la la,
I
so
know, right?
fancy.
I know. I know. My goodness. So we'll give it a second to let anybody who is not here and wants to be here get here. And oh my goodness, can you hear those alerts popping through?
I do not hear those.
Oh, good, because they are loud and annoying on my end.
Oh,
I know, right? Okay. I am Jill Bates Moore. I am one half of Dahlia Law Group, and I am actually really excited about today's topic. I'm excited about all the topics, but I'm really excited about today's. Who are you and what are you excited about?
I am Alicia Holland, the other half of Dahlia Law Group, and not just for internet, but in truth, same. I was just thinking a few minutes ago before I was getting ready to sit down for this conversation that I'm really excited about it. And in particular, excited because this one is one that is not California specific. It's for everybody. And so that makes me really happy.
Excellent. So Quinora was just able to join us, and so she's saying hello.
Hey, Quinora.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about what we're talking about today, and then let's get into our check-in. Actually, I don't like that order of things. Let's check in first. How are you doing?
I'm all right today. I had a weird day yesterday where I woke up completely disoriented and dizzy and could not remember what day it was. And it was a mess. And so I got a really good, hard, solid night's sleep last night and woke up today and actually knew what day it was and what my
Listen,
name was and all the good things.
we will
And
take
so I am
success in whatever
grateful.
form it comes.
Yes. So the fact that it's not what yesterday looked like, I was like, I am calling that progress and I'm happy about it. So,
Excellent, excellent,
how are
excellent.
you?
I am I am all right. I am a little bit low energy at this time in the afternoon because today has just been a back-to-back day from the start until now, and then after this live stream there's yet more stuff to do. Um so listen, I'm happy to be busy in a way that is revenue generating because the way my mortgages are set up, um, we require that. So I'm not complaining at all. But yeah, just a little low energy today. But even though my energy may be a little low, my excitement is still on high. Why are we so excited?
We are so excited because we are talking about a conversation that applies to everybody. And so we have affectionately titled it The Go See, which is how do you hire a lawyer? How to find one, how to interview that person, and how to hopefully pick somebody that's a right fit for you.
Absolutely. This one, so several years ago, I had already been a practicing lawyer for quite a while, but I needed a lawyer. Um, Somebody had tried to pull some shenanigans, and it was in an area of practice that was not my area of practice. And so I was very much a consumer for legal services, right? But even as an insider, quote unquote, right? A lawyer in the industry, in the geographic area where I needed to hire a lawyer, I still felt like, where in the world do I start with this? Right? And so I had to go through what felt like a lot of stuff to to find a lawyer. Ultimately, we found somebody who's a good fit. But frankly, that was luck. So it was just lucky that we found somebody who was great. And since then I've thought, if that's the experience of an insider. I felt stupid in some ways because it wasn't my area of law. I didn't know anything about it, right? I didn't know what the right questions were to ask. I didn't know how much it should cost. I didn't know, procedurally what was supposed to happen, yada, yada, yada. So I felt really uninformed. I felt like, even though I did get some referrals from people that I trusted, even so, in following up on those referrals, I felt like I was like the vibe I was getting from people that I was trying to hire and actually to pay my money to. I felt like I was inconveniencing them. It felt like I was breaking into their day in order to have an appointment to consult, to talk about my legal issue. And so I was just reflecting on that experience when we were putting together the notes for this episode and was thinking, man, if that was my experience as a quote unquote insider, what in the world are people going through trying to find a lawyer? And I noticed it's a thing that even amongst ourselves, lawyers don't really talk about a whole lot. So I'm excited for this. Excited. So we're going to start with how to find a lawyer. Is that where we're going to begin the beginning?
We are going to, talk about how to find one and then how to talk to them.
So let's do the first thing first.
Yes. So, first thing of how to find somebody, where do you even go to find a lawyer? So, I know you just mentioned one of them, which is talking to people that you know that might have a referral. And those people are not necessarily, it happens to be you're a lawyer, so you may have had some lawyers to call on to find out who they would recommend in a particular area. But this isn't even one that requires talking to the lawyers, because sometimes you have folks that in their work or in their circles know people that are lawyers. And so it's always great to talk to people that you know for a referral, because even if the lawyer that they know is not in the area that you need, that lawyer may know somebody or have a network that they can reach out to.
Mm-hmm. What if you don't know any lawyers, or if you don't know anybody who knows lawyers? And it almost feels strange for me to even say that, because it seems where we go, like you trip over a lawyer, you can trip over a lawyer. But if you don't know a lawyer, or if you don't know anybody who knows a lawyer, right, then there are a couple of places to start. The first place I would start is with your local county bar association. And, well, actually, that might not be the first place I would start, but we're going to start talking there. County bar associations, or city bar associations, or regional bar associations, it's the local bar association. And by local, I mean the association of, it's a professional organization of lawyers, and they will do all kinds of things. They'll do lawyer education, they'll do community education, and that sort of thing. But one of the things that they typically will have is a lawyer referral service. And this is not the bar association or the state bar that regulates the practice of law in your state. This is the local body that is the professional organization where basically lawyers get together and talk amongst themselves, essentially. So I would start there. Frequently, the county or local bar associations are they are sanctioned by the state bar. They'll say whether they are or not, but frequently they will be. They will be known and blessed by by the state bar, and At least in the experience of our local bar association, their lawyer referral service is a vetted service. And so, what I mean by that is that, first of all, let me explain what I mean by lawyer referral service. Lawyer referral service is a service offering that the bar association will offer to the public, where you can call them, you can email them, you can schedule an appointment online, however they do that, to tell, and what you will be saying is, I need a lawyer and I think it's a lawyer in this practice area, or I need a lawyer to handle this type of issue, and they can help you figure out what type of lawyer you might need. And so then they will consult with their database of lawyers who have opted to participate. So these are not people who are cold or being cold called or anything like that. These are people who have frequently applied to be in the database and also paid to be in the database. So these are people that you will get to talk to because they want to talk to you. So oftentimes there is a cost associated with the lawyer referral service. I know for our local service, I think it used to be $30. It may have gone up a little bit recently, but in exchange for that $30, what you get is a list of lawyers, think probably like two or three, and that you will get to check out and decide who you want to have a consultation with. And then that consultation will be covered, so you will not have to pay any more money for that consultation. At least that's how our local bar association works. So that's what I mean by lawyer referral service. Now, when I say it is a vetted lawyer referral service, what I mean is that the bar association actually checks when the lawyer submits their application to be in the database. The bar association actually checks to make sure that the lawyer is in good standing with the state bar, that if there is malpractice insurance that's needed, then they have the right type and amount of malpractice insurance, that their office is where they say it is. When we were on the when we were in the database for our bar association, they came to our office and actually met with us there to make sure that we were practicing where we said we were practicing. And also the lawyer has to certify that they have the experience that they say that they have, and that they practice in the areas of law that they say that they practice in. So the point of all of that is to make sure that you can walk away with some assurances that you're not getting catfished, right? Because Google can tell you anything, right? And so that's what the County Bar Association Lawyer Referral Service is. Hi, Naomi. Hi, Shauna. Hi, Lisa. Lisa is asking a question about whether that service is free. And it depends is the answer. It depends on what the rules are, or what the setup is for the bar association in your locality. In order to find the county bar association and find out if there is a service fee that goes along with the referral, you can Google local bar association and then put in your city name or your county and state, and you should come up with a list of the names, and then they'll tell you. They're very transparent and straightforward about what it costs. Are there any other ways that you can think of to find a lawyer?
Yeah, another one is through your state bar association as well, or not association, but your state bar. And so the state bar is the regulatory agency for lawyers that actually does the testing process, the making sure that a lawyer maintains their license, make sure that they maintain their continuing education. They handle the discipline for lawyers. And when necessary, when lawyers need to be booted from the profession, then they also handle that process.
Listen,
as well.
burn some sage or something.
Yeah.
You're going to say that.
So, we are never trying to talk to them about those things, but this is what they do. And so as part of that, because Lawyers are officers of the court, whether they are practicing in a litigation space such that they go to court or not. They are officers of the court. They are public guardians. And so, whether or not a lawyer is licensed and the state of their license is something that is public record. And so, you can find the licensing agency for lawyers for your state. And there they will have a database of all of the lawyers that are practicing in a particular area under their name, where their practice location is. They will also have a place where lawyers can specify what area of law that they practice in as well. And so they will even give you resources about finding a lawyer. Like, for instance, on the California site, there's a whole section for members of the public that you can specify, this is what I'm looking for, and they will give you a list of folks that you can look at to at least get a narrower list of people practicing in a particular area.
And when you say area, I don't want that to be confusing. What do you mean when you say area?
So I actually mean two things. So one area is your physical location area. That is one thing, because if what you need is something that is going to require to be boots on the ground, then you might want somebody that's more local to you physically instead of on the other side of your state, for instance. The other thing about area is lawyers specialize in certain areas of the law. And so when you are looking for a lawyer for a particular issue that you might have, you're going to want somebody who practices in that particular issue. So if you need an attorney that deals with family law issues, a divorce, an adoption, custody arrangement, something of that nature, you don't really need a lawyer that does criminal law issues, because those are two different areas of the law. And so you want somebody that actually does the thing that you were looking for.
So the goal is to find a lawyer who's knowledgeable about the legal issue that you have. And so where they're located might matter, but definitely what legal area they are knowledgeable about is definitely important.
Very true.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, once you have landed on a couple of folks that seem, oh, please pull
So
to one side.
I right. So I had another thought. Another way of finding a lawyer is actually to talk to your employer, and to talk to your employer in a specific way. Many employees have access to employee assistance programs, or it might be called EAP or something like that. The 800 number that is typically associated with like mental health or stress management or suicide prevention, that sort of thing. That's what I think a lot of people associate EAP with. But EAP actually can cover a pretty wide umbrella. And so call that 800 number and tell them you need to find a lawyer for something. Now, listen, don't go through putting all your business in. These people do not have attorney-client privilege with you, and so don't get down into the granular details, right? But you can call them and ask them if they have or know of a lawyer referral service. You can also ask if your job has any benefits that are a part of your benefits package, or that you might have access to even at the next open enrollment or something like that, where you might have access to a lawyer. We'll talk more about this in particular next week, when we have the second half of this conversation, where we'll talk about how to pay for a lawyer, like what things should cost and how to pay for it. But those resources can also be a place where you can get referrals to a lawyer as well.
Yeah. And how you find out if you have an EAP service, if you don't know, talk to your supervisor. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to your supervisor, whoever manages the human resources in your company, if you just ask them, do we have any sort of EAP program? then they will be able to direct you to, if it exists, and how to get in touch with them.
Yeah. And if you get any pushback, check your, you can also check your check stub, because if you're paying for it, it should be on that check stub somewhere.
That is true.
All
Yeah.
right. So once we have a list of lawyers, we're ready to start making some appointments and actually talk to a lawyer. How do we do that? Because I think finding a lawyer is one thing, but even once you found a lawyer, it's still possible to get tripped up and to feel stuck when it's time to pick a lawyer. And this is a place where I know from my experience, I didn't feel particularly at choice about it. Like once there was one name that seemed reasonably worthwhile, it was like, well, you're the only one here, so I guess you're on my team, right? So how can we feel more at choice in electing a lawyer, particularly given how much they charge?
So the first thing to think about is actually not so much what you're talking to the lawyer about, but being clear about what you're talking to the lawyer about for your own self. So thinking about what is your main objective and what does success look like in that working relationship will be critical, because when you're in there talking to the lawyer and you're going to have all these thoughts bouncing around in your head about the issue that you're facing, and the lawyer is likely going to ask you a lot of questions, because that's just what lawyers do. We ask a lot of questions, and so there's going to be a lot of words in the space. And so knowing going in what your vision of success is in at the end of this thing will help you for being able to evaluate
Right.
what they're talking actually matches up with what your goal is.
Right. So what that might look like in our practice area, for example, we practice in legacy and estate planning, probate, and litigation that is related to those areas. So it's not always the case that you will know the sort of the legal lingo, right, to identify a legal issue. And you don't need to, and you shouldn't, and no lawyer should make you feel like you need to. All right. It should be enough for you to call up a lawyer or call us up, right? If you were in California and you needed help with what we do, to say, hey, you know what, my grandmother passed away earlier this year. There is a house that I know that she owned, and we need to change it so that we own it, right? That's perfectly fine. That is enough information for me to ask follow-up questions and to be able to not only translate that into the legal issue, right? So the house needs to go through, there needs to be a petition for probate and all of that, but also to explain to you what that legal issue is and how we might propose to go about it. So I think the key here is to know, like Allysia said, know what your end game is, and don't worry about the language that you need to use or having any magic words to identify what that end game is. The lawyer is going to help you distill down the legal issue, because that's one of the benefits of having a lawyer, but or of talking to a lawyer. But know what you want out of it, and know that as early as you can, because it really does help to govern and shape everything else. Nobody can know whether or not they've met the goal unless they know what the goal is. So start there.
Yeah, that's true. So once you're clear on your objective, then what do you talk to the lawyer about? What do you say in that first call, in that first meeting?
One thing I think it's really helpful to remember going into these meetings is that you are the expert on your situation. You're the one who knows all the details about your situation. The lawyer doesn't know any of that stuff, and some of that stuff they don't need to know. So don't worry about telling them, don't worry about beginning at the beginning, right? like in the hypothetical with grandmother's house, that when grandmother has passed away and we need to change ownership of the house, don't go back to, well, when I was a child, I was my grandmother's favorite. And my mother had such trouble having a child. My grandmother didn't know if she was going to have grandchildren. Listen, don't do that. Do not do that. And the reason is because lawyers are human beings too, right? Like, you have our attention as soon as we pick up that phone. After we get off of the pleasantries and the hello and how are you and how'd you find all of that stuff. Sorry. I hope the stream didn't go down. So the most hilarious thing just happened. I got a social media, or no, I'm sorry, not social media, but a screen time alert. And so I got the time limit thing. My computer
Oh,
basically said, you've been sitting in front of this computer too long today. And so we're going to shut it
oh.
down. So we're going to shut it
You got
down.
put on computer quarantine.
Right.
Lordy me, I
I,
didn't even know that could
I
happen.
told you it's been a back to back day. Let me just check in with the folks who are here with us and see if just to make sure that it didn't boot anybody off.
Yeah.
Um, so I just put out a call to see if everybody could still hear us. Yeah, I know. Lisa's saying, "Whoa." Like, yeah, right. It took over the entire screen, and there was this big what do you call that, sand timer icon on there, and it said you have reached the time limit. And so I had options for what I wanted to do, like what I could tell the computer to do. Anyway, um so Lisa said I froze like a squirrel. I did. I totally did.
So I was like, what is happening? I
Yeah.
can see you're moving. The screen is not frozen, but oh
Hey
shucks.
Tony. Yeah, so I'm glad that it didn't just end everything and boot everybody off. But what I was saying is that in response to the question about what should we ask and what should we talk about when we're calling a lawyer, get to the point, right? I highly encourage people to begin at the end. Begin with, I have a situation. And if you want to write this down, that's fine. Here's your script. I have a situation. It involves me and another business, or it involves me and my family, or me and my siblings, or me and my grandmother's house, right? But it better involve you somehow. Otherwise, you're the wrong person in all likelihood to be calling the lawyer. But in any event, I have a situation. It involves me and whomever it involves. And what I want out of it is to have my grandmother's house changed into my name, or to know what I am supposed to do with the trust that I am a trustee of now that grandmother has passed away, or to, I don't know, to defend myself against a lawsuit that was filed by my son because he thinks that he is entitled to more from my trust than I have allowed for him. Right? Start there, and then you can back into the details. Right? But beginning at the end tells the lawyer how to listen. Because a lawyer is going to be looking for the legal issues. We are issue spotting, right? So if you start with, well, when I was little, my grandmother said XYZ, then we're looking for the legal issue, right? But if you can help give us some guidance early on about what you want to happen, that is going to help us to know how to listen, right? And it's going to key us right in, and we're probably going to have a million questions from the start. but it will give you a way to make the most productive use of that go see, right? Because of that initial sort of mini consultation, which frequently you don't have to pay for, but as a result, it's frequently pretty short. Like it's probably only going to be about 20 minutes or so. So you really want to maximize that time. Is there anything else we should be talking about, or any other ways that we should be talking to the lawyer when we're essentially interviewing them to figure out whether we're a good fit to have them represent us or they're a good fit?
Yeah, so part of what we're talking about, so what we've talked about so far is making sure that it's a right fit for the legal aspects of it. The other thing that's important to evaluate in that initial meeting is making sure that it's a right fit for the practical aspects of working with someone. So when you are working with a lawyer, it is going to be a partnership. You are the expert in whatever your thing is for your life. Your lawyer is going to be the expert in the legal aspects of how to accomplish your goal. But that's a partnership. You all have to be able to work together. So some of the things that you want to be thinking about and talking with the lawyer about is getting a sense of what their working style is to make sure that it's a right fit for you. So this may be less of a thing now in the post-COVID era, the in and post-COVID era than it was
I'm gonna say what
COVID. But
post because
right,
I'm
that's why
still
I
here.
realized it and stopped myself. I'm like, no, it's not over. We still in it. The peri-COVID era and post-COVID era is if you know that you are a person that values face-to-face sit-down relationships, then it's going to be important for you to know if this lawyer doesn't do face-to-face meetings, that they have a completely virtual setup and it's not possible for you to meet with them in person. That's a thing that you might need to know. Or if you have particular things that you need as part of your communication, so special equipment because maybe you are hearing impaired, and so you need to be able to use the telephone that has the TYY access, then knowing if they have capacity to do that in your working relationship. If you have work reins that you don't get time during your day to be able to speak to somebody in a traditional 8 to 5 setup. So you need to be able to talk with them on your lunch hour or in the evening sometimes, then to know if that's a possibility, how to do that. Or if you need them to call you first or send you a text message and let you know that there's an email so that you know to check it. Certain things of that nature for your just how you run your life. Those are things that you might want to be screening to ask the lawyer if that's something they can do, and also frankly just to see how they accommodate those requests and how they respond to those.
Yeah. Yeah. Those particular ideas are like those particular examples might apply to you. They might not. And so the key from what Alicia is saying, I think, is to make sure that you have given some thought to what your needs are. So don't walk away from this live stream with your little bulleted list saying, okay, Alicia said that I need to ask if they can accommodate TYY and hearing impaired technologies. If that doesn't apply to you, if that's not something, just because we're saying it as an example, doesn't necessarily mean that that applies to you. The takeaway instruction is for you to give some thought to what your needs are and be honest with yourself. Like it's going to come up eventually, right? Like the person I love most in the world I know that there is a particular way that he engages my husband. I'm talking about, it's okay. I talk about him all the time. He knows. I know there's a particular way that he engages with the telephone. Like, I don't know if something bad happened to him in a previous life and he got news about it on the telephone or what it is, but he doesn't really like dealing with the telephone. So I know that if I am going to reach him, like there are certain things that we just need to do, right? So if that's you, If you are a texter and not a talker on the phone, right? Like, you know that about you. And in order for you to communicate well with somebody who, like Allysia said, is going to be partnering with you on your important work, then they need to know how to communicate well with you. And the worst thing they can say is, no, we don't have those capabilities, or no, I'm not willing to do that, or whatever. But that is giving you feedback on whether or not this relationship is a good fit. Some other things to think about are, excuse me, are, I don't want to go too fast through this because this is really important. People misunderstand this all the time, and it can have really terrible consequences. You need to know when that lawyer is your lawyer. Just because you talk to somebody, now this is just like it is at the club, okay? Just because you talk to somebody does not mean y'all go together. Okay? You need to know when that lawyer actually represents you, meaning when that lawyer has professional responsibility for your matter, right? When are they obligated to do something for you? Right? That's really, really important to know. We have people all the time. We'll consult with them one time. Maybe they'll hire us, maybe they won't. I mean, that's just the nature of business. But then, like 4 months later, I have literally had people call back to say, okay, well, I want to know what's going on with my case. And we're like, say what? Say, huh? Right?
Who
And
this?
right? And it's particularly surprising to us because we are very clear about when the relationship starts and when and how it ends. And any lawyer that you're interviewing, you want to have that clarity from them as well. You also want to know, what will communication look like? Is lawyer Jill, should I expect to get a phone call from you with an update, in a week? Should I expect to get an email? If we are in a no news is good news, right, type of relationship, and that can happen, not because lawyers are lazy, but because some types of representation just have really long periods of inactivity between periods of flurries of activity. So think like a lawsuit, right? There's a whole bunch of work, you get the lawsuit filed, and then you have to wait until it gets served, or till everybody knows about it, or till the first hearing date. And then there's a flurry of activity, right, when you're exchanging information. And then there's just a dead period where your people are reviewing the information and figuring out what to do next. So knowing what communication will look like and how you should expect to be communicated with. And also, of course, if you have any communication preferences or requirements, then making sure that those are known. And I think this is a place where it's important to segue into the scope of work, right? So, Allysia, can you talk about that?
Absolutely. I would add one last piece to that too, is also who you should expect to hear from.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's your lawyer is working with someone else, a legal secretary, a paralegal, an associate, to know that you might be getting communications from that person as opposed to the lawyer that you speak with on the front end,
Right.
and to know if it's updates or if you're going to be passing information through that person so that you can decide if that setup works for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
and
with
also what that person's role is, because just if I could just have a second, Allysia, just
Yeah.
to mention the importance of attorney-client privilege. The attorney-client privilege keeps secret everything that you and your lawyer talk about in confidence, right? That attorney client privilege extends to people who work for that lawyer in the lawyer's office. But these days, sometimes lawyers have they have contractors, or you might have to talk to a vendor or something like that. And so the attorney-client privilege may or may not apply to that person that you're supposed to talk to. So that's why it's important to know who you are expected to communicate with, because it'll also tell you, whether this person is a secret keeper, essentially, or if talking to this person is the equivalent of having all of your secrets put on the front page of the newspaper, so that you can govern yourself accordingly. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's an important point, worthy of interruption. So, thinking about the scope of work is, I think both of these points really go together. When does our relationship start, and what is the scope of work that we're doing? And a term that's coming to mind for me is something that I remember always swirling about when we were in college, called the DTR, which was define the relationship.
Oh, okay.
And so it's
Okay.
when we're hanging out and doing whatever we're doing, at some point we got to have the DTR conversation
Uh-huh.
to define this relationship.
So how
What is
much
it
do
we
we
are
go together?
doing? Right. And so that is very much the scope of work conversation between the when do we go together and what are we doing together. And so the scope of work is, it needs to be written down on paper exactly what it is that we are accomplishing in our working relationship together, so that we know whatever fees that we are paying, what's in, what's out, who's expected to do what in this relationship. So we are, what is the division of labor in our working relationship? What is your lawyer going to do versus what are the parts that you are expected to do? And what issue it is that we are working on. So the example Jill gave before of what we do, legacy and estate planning, probate, and litigation in those areas. So our contract together, when we have defined our relationship, might say that we're going to work together on your legacy and estate plan. Great. And during the time that we are working together, if you get pulled over and get a speeding ticket, do not send that ticket to my office saying, here's the court date. You gonna be there, right? Because
Okay,
that's
she's
not
saying
how
that
this
because that
works.
actually happened. Go on, Shady
Yeah.
Boots. Go on, Shady Boots. Go on, give the people the example.
So so that is not a part of our defined working relationship together. And so that is outside our scope of work together.
Right.
Now, if we are in that same example that we have contracted together to work on your legacy and estate plan, and you say to me, oh, I remembered that I wrote a will before and I found this document and I'm not sure if this is applicable to what we're doing, then that is within the confines of our relationship. And so while we may not have known that on the front end when we started, that's within the scope of work that we are
Right.
doing together.
Yeah, this is really, really important because there are multiple different ways that you can structure a relationship with your lawyer and the scope of work that you'll have with them. And if you find value in that, we didn't plan on doing a deep dive into that today, but if you find value in that topic, or that's something that it would benefit you for us to talk about in more detail, we are happy to do that. Just let us know and we'll drop it in the line of episodes. But just know that every single thing that is necessary for for handling your matter, right? Getting to that goal that you said at the very beginning, everything that's necessary for carrying that out, if your lawyer is not going to handle it, so it's not within the scope of work that you have agreed to with your lawyer, then that means you have to handle it. And so asking this question and being clear about the answer is really about, like, what is on your task list, Lawyer Jill, or your lawyer Allysia, and what is on my task list, client. So that way nobody is disappointed and you don't end up with any fireworks in, in your matter, because because there was a misunderstanding or something was not done. And that can happen very easily. A super easy example is if we are doing, let's take trust administration for somebody. One of the things that has to happen when you're administering a trust after somebody's died in particular is there are notices that have to go out and there are taxes that need to be arranged for. Well, we typically don't do the taxes because most of the time people have a CPA or a financial planner or somebody like that who dealt with those things during their lifetime. But isn't it important for you to know and for us to know who's going to do the taxes? Because if they don't get done, aren't there consequences and repercussions? So it can happen that easily. And in the end, everybody's looking at each other like this. Well, weren't you supposed to do it? No, weren't you supposed to do it? That's a really awkward conversation, and it can be expensive.
Yeah. And I would just add, even when you're within that working relationship with your lawyer, part of that is having a good stream of communication. And so if you are not sure about whether something is on your bucket list or your lawyer's bucket list, call your lawyer and
Mm-hmm.
ask. Don't
Mm-hmm.
just be out there doing stuff thinking that you were supposed to and letting your lawyer find out later, either because you told them or even worse, because somebody else has called your lawyer to tell them that you were out here doing XYZ and PDQ.
In these streets. Alicia is trying to make my head explode because she's talking about real things that have actually happened. I'm over here making up ridiculous hypotheticals, and she's like, "Yeah, remember that one time?"
And another thing,
So a couple of other things. We want to be mindful of your time. And we really could talk about this forever. And so if there's anything about this that you want us to drill down on, let us know, and we're happy to revisit it. Lisa, I see your question about likability and whether likability is a good thing to identify, and whether the lawyer seems unkind or distracted or something like that, something that's setting off your I don't know about you in this senses that you just suck up because the lawyer is quote unquote a good lawyer. Um, I will say this about that. The state of California issues bar numbers consecutively. So the first lawyer who was licensed got number one, right? The bar numbers are now up into the 300,000s. There is not a shortage of good lawyers. There just aren't. Some lawyers are more braggadocious. Some lawyers are better at self-promotion. Some lawyers, have a greater social media presence. But that doesn't mean that there is a scarcity of good lawyers. What you want is the lawyer who is good for you. And you have to trust yourself, trust your reaction, trust what you know about human interaction, to be able to discern whether this is going to be a good fit. And the reason this is that important is because of what Alicia said earlier about this relationship being a partnership. The reason that attorney-client privilege exists, and it is unbustable. Like nobody can make a lawyer tell what you told them, right?
I'm taking your secrets to my grave,
Right.
even if you go first.
So, the reason for that is because the law wants to encourage people to be as open as possible and as truthful as possible about these important things, even when it's uncomfortable, even when I did something dumb, even when I did something I'm not proud of, even when, right? The attorney client privilege exists to protect my secrets so that I can tell them to my advocate, right? So that they can partner with me to get the best result for me for whatever situation it is that I'm dealing with. And the reason I'm saying it that way is because if you don't feel good with the lawyer, if you don't trust it that you can talk to the lawyer, then you won't. And if you won't talk to the lawyer, then the lawyer can't represent you. Not well. Nobody's going to be a good lawyer if they don't have access to the information that only their client has. I can do all the legal research in the world. But remember, you are the expert about your situation. And so if I can't get your expertise because you don't trust me or because you think I'm an a-hole, then it doesn't matter how good I am. I am going to suck as a lawyer for you. So find somebody else. You deserve that. You deserve that. Couple of other.
And if
Oh,
I
go ahead.
can
Sorry.
add a thought to that,
Please.
just
Please do.
that you are the expert about what's going on for you is really important when you're evaluating that question. And so another piece of that is, yeah, your lawyer can do all of that legal research, but if they aren't a good listener and they are so busy telling you about how good they are and they're the best and why you should hire them, and you get that they don't value the words that you are trying to insert, the information, the facts, then that's also not going to be a good fit for you because they are not going to be well equipped to be your advocate
Right.
because they don't have the information because they never shut up long enough for you to try to give it to them.
Right. This is a relationship where only one of you has to live with the consequences of how it comes out. That's you. So, precisely. So, a couple of really quick things. Also to add in here, to know, how do we break up? We talked about how do we know that we go together? How do we know that we don't go together anymore? Right? Being clear about that. How long does the lawyer keep your file? Right? You might need access to the file materials. You should have access to the file materials at any time. The file belongs to you. The file belongs to the client. Okay? Any lawyer that tells you differently, run. Things that are not included in the file are attorney work products, so like notes and research and drafts and that sort of thing. But the rest of it, it's yours. How does the lawyer hold your file? This is becoming more important these days as we're working more remotely, as we are exchanging more information digitally. Are their communication channels encrypted? Are they backing things up? Like, how do they actually hold your data so that you can have some assurances that those things are safe. Also,
And how do
how,
they transfer data?
right,
So if you have to send a lot of sensitive information, bank account numbers, IDs, social security numbers as part of your representation, and what they tell you is, oh, just email them to me, just email it to me, be concerned. Be very, very concerned. So knowing some of those pieces of how they handle those security things on the front end are going to be helpful.
exactly. And this we could have even covered when we were talking about communication, but how does a lawyer communicate about money? So it is not abnormal, and we'll talk more about like the sort of drilling down onto lawyers and money next week. But if you have money on deposit, like a fee deposit with a lawyer or a retainer or a cost deposit or whatever, if the lawyer is holding money of yours that is still yours because the lawyer hasn't spent it yet on your behalf, or if it's a legal fee, they haven't earned it yet. How do they communicate about that? Will you get a statement monthly? Will it be quarterly? Do you have a preference? Whatever. How will they communicate about that? Also, if a lawyer is billing hourly or something like that, like how do they communicate about their billing practices and that sort of thing. Nobody wants a money surprise that ends up with, some big explosive bill. Like that'll kill a relationship so fast. It just will. Um, I think we've covered everything except the disciplinary thing, huh, Holland? Okay, do you
Yep,
want me to cover that or do you want to cover it?
I can cover it.
Okay.
So, one of the things, what we're talking about is in disciplinary, one of the things we mentioned before is you have the state bar, which is the licensing agency for lawyers. And we talked about they are the ones that can give a lawyer das Boot from the profession. They are also the ones that oversee the process for sometimes you have discipline against a lawyer that is not so far as to do with lawyers when you get kicked out. It's called disbarment. So it's not so far as disbarment, but there may be some other thing, and that is all part of the public record. And so if you were going to look up a particular lawyer on your state bar website database, you're going to see if that lawyer has any disciplinary record. And one cautionary note is just because you see something on that disciplinary record is certainly not a reason that that person should be disqualified, because there are many levels of disciplinary actions that the bar might take and many reasons why they might take them. And so you have that information. And what, at a minimum, you want to do with it is when you have the conversation with that lawyer, ask them about it. And what that will also give you a view of is how they handle difficult conversations and difficult topics. With if they are defensive and shut you down and won't give you any information about it, then you can take note of that, because if something difficult or uncomfortable comes up in your working relationship, then that's likely how they're going to handle that. If they are forthcoming versus if they are forthcoming and tell you what the issue was or where to find the information, then you can also see that information. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a thing to know that you might see it, and that alone is not a something that's a disqualifier, particularly when you're dealing with a lawyer who might have been practicing for many, many years and decades. It's just the nature of the way things work. The longer you're doing it, the more chance there is that something like that might show up in your record, but you can weigh that against them.
Yeah. Yeah. And plenty of lawyers go their entire careers without having any disciplinary history at all. So I don't want you to think that, oh, it's just that's bound to happen at some point. Not necessarily. I think that I really, really am keyed into and really appreciate Alicia's point about how that conversation it can give you so much insight about how the lawyer communicates about difficult stuff. And then, I mean, ultimately you still get to make the decision about whether you want that person to represent you or not. um so Alicia, thank you very much for that. We have talked quite a bit about what to ask, um what to expect. A little bit, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but also what to notice so is really important, right? Because you're picking up on some things as well, or some things are in response to direct questions, but some things it's a vibe, right? Like it's a vibe. So if it's okay with you, Alicia, in the interest of time, I would love to just pancake those two topics. Does that work for you?
I like pancakes.
All right, pancakes it is then. Um, One of the things that I'm going to go through what to expect really quickly. We've talked about most of it. One thing that we haven't talked about is um, a roadmap, right? You should walk out of that go see with an understanding of what moving forward with this lawyer might look like and what it might require, right? Of you and of them. And also a roadmap, some sort of proposal or at least opening thoughts about how the lawyer might propose to handle the situation that you're in, right? So if it's grandmother's house, right, and we need to transfer title of grandmother's house after her passing to, to client or a potential client, then you should expect a lawyer to say, okay, well, that process, if grandmother did not have a trust, then that process is likely to require a petition to the probate court to open a probate proceeding and to have someone appointed as the administrator, and then within that proceeding to have the title of the house transferred. In order to do that, there are these paperworks that we need to file with the court that requires us to get some information for you. So we'll have a further conversation about that, right? Like, you should walk out of there like, oh, okay, there's something needs to happen, and I have at least a high level understanding of what the something is. You should also walk out of there having had a conversation about costs and about money. And we'll talk in more detail about that next week, but you should walk out of that meeting having had that conversation. As far as what to notice and to pay attention to, I think Lisa's question about listening and fit and that sort of thing really kicked this off and covered quite a bit of it. So I will just add a couple of things before we get to the action items, because we have 5 action items for you right now, whether you need a lawyer right now or not. So I'm going to move through these quickly so Allysia can give you your action items. 1, how did the lawyer handle answering your questions? Did you actually feel like your questions were answered, right? Was the lawyer a good listener? Did they listen? Seriously, if a lawyer is not listening to you when they're trying to earn your business, do you think they're going to listen any better once they have it? Right? Like, and that's true whether it's a lawyer, whether it's a contractor, whether it's a banker, whether it's a candlestick maker, like that. Were they listening? Right? Is the lawyer talking in a language and in a way that you can understand? Sometimes really smart people get really invested in being really smart and showing people how smart they are, right? And so they use a lot of what my grandmother would call $100 words when when a quarter word would do, right? So do you feel like you understand them and like you're well understood by them? Also, remember that nobody knows everything and that the law is usually evolving. So the law is not a static thing, right? So it's not possible to know everything about any area of law at any given time. And with that in mind, did the lawyer at any point acknowledge that there are some things that they don't know and they might have to figure out? It might require some research, or it might require some information gathering. That point of humility is I think it's actually really important. And then notice your reaction to the lawyer. And this circles back to Lisa's point. Do you feel comfortable talking to them? Did you notice that your heart rate was up in a way that had more to do with them than the situation that you were there about, right? Were you uncomfortable sitting in the chair? Were you anxious to get off the phone, or whatever? Notice your reaction to the person, because that's going to give you some insight about your comfort level in dealing with them. So I want to turn over the microphone so Allysia can give you your 5 action items. Do these things, whether you are looking for a lawyer right now or not. What's the first thing?
The first thing is to identify your local county bar association and their lawyer referral service and bookmark that address on your computer. So the reason that you are doing that is because it's great.
Sorry.
Yes.
I was too into it. Sorry.
Slow down, Dave Letterman.
Sorry.
So
took my hype woman duties too seriously.
So the reason that you are going to do that right now is to identify that bar association, their lawyer referral service program, and bookmark it, is because right now you're not looking for the lawyer. When the something comes up that you need a lawyer, that you need to find us somebody, something has happened. Not the time that you want to be starting at zero. So at least having your toolkit ready. So when somebody's got a cut on their finger, you want to already have a first aid kit in the house that you know where to lay hands on it, not let me find my purse and my car keys so that I can go to the drugstore to try to find a bandage and the ointment and all of the stuff.
Right.
Think of this as your first aid kit and get it ready.
Cool.
All right, hype woman.
What's the second
Number
thing you need to do right now?
You are going to make note of the lawyers that you know in your professional and personal circles.
And bookmark it.
Again,
Sorry.
not necessarily people that you need to reach out to right now, but just think through and look at your contact list on your Instagram, on your Facebook, in your address book, your LinkedIn, and look for the people that you know that are lawyers. And when we say lawyers, if you know that they went to law school, even if they are not necessarily practicing law,
Yep.
that is still going to be a good resource to just have at ready reference for if you need it.
And bookmark them, or like write them down somewhere so that you have ready access to them. What's the third thing you need to do? Right, wait, where's the camera? Right now.
Number 3 is you want to identify your local law library. So for instance, in California, every county has them. So the county I am sitting in is Alameda County, and I know where my Alameda County Law Library is. If you don't know if your county has one, you can look for that. You can also ask at your public library if there is a law library, and the county library and the law library are going to be different. Books you're going to find in the law library are going to be legal text, so the things that lawyers use to do their research, forms, databases, all of those things are at the law library. So you're going to check and see if your county has one. If your county doesn't have it at that level, it might be at the city level that you have it. And if you don't find a reference for a city or county law library, look for a law school that is near you, wherever there's the nearest law school. If it is a law school, they are definitely going to have a library, and certain aspects of that library are going to be available to the public. And you're going to find what of those is closest to you and plug it.
Can I add one thing here?
Yeah.
The law library that's not attached to like a law school that we're talking about is a public library. And it is different than the section of your regular public library, like Allysia said, that has legal books in it, in that the entire library is devoted to legal research, legal tools, legal issues, including the reference librarians, right? All of the reference librarians in the public law library are trained in that way, and they work with members of the public so they can help you craft and research questions, that sort of thing. They also will have public seminars and workshops and that sort of thing that might help with, that provide legal resources, might help with legal issues. Usually that's also where the lawyers in the library programs, which are programs that will allow you to meet with a lawyer for free and have that go see, right? Like that quick conversation about your legal issue. A lot of times those happen in the law library, and that can be a place for you to find a lawyer if you're looking for one as well.
Yeah. And one last little note on that law library piece, or the lawyers in the library specifically, is if you know that you think you have an issue and you're not even sure what kind of lawyer to look for. So we talked about areas of law, and you're just like, I just know this is the situation. I don't know how to start looking for the right person. Finding a program like a Lawyers in the Library can help, because that lawyer can help with the issue spotting to help you identify what legal area you should be looking for someone.
Okay, we've had a lot to say about this. I know we're over time. Thank you so much for your patience, but there are 2 more things that you can do right now. What's the 4th thing?
Identify your local court website, which is likely going to be at the county level as well. And when you go to that court, find the website and look for their self-help section. It's going to say self-help resources, something of that nature. But what that's going to help you with is some basic descriptions of areas of law. They might have access to certain forms. They may have access to a self-help center if your county runs those, where you can get an appointment to talk to a lawyer to try to get some help there as well.
And once you find it, Bookmark it.
Bookmark it.
All right. What's the last thing that you can do right now? This one's really straightforward. Doesn't require any explanation. Just do this.
And this is one that we've already talked to you about, but find it now, is find your state bar, the licensing agency or association, and bookmark it. That's going to be the place where you can verify that the person that you're thinking about looking at is in fact actually a lawyer, that they have passed somebody's bar and are licensed to practice in your state. That's where you're going to see what that disciplinary history is, and that's also where you can find good contact information for that person, because the state, you have to keep, as a lawyer, you have to keep it updated with the state bar. So even if the Google search doesn't turn out the right thing, the state bar website will.
I just told these people that they ain't have to have any explanation for that, and you went through the whole thing.
You knew who I was when you brought me here.
It can't be helped. It can't be helped. Listen, thank you all so much again for your patience and for your flexibility. Hopefully this information was useful to you. Clearly you can see our passion and our interest in the subject area. As soon as we have a moment to take a breath, we have actually prepared a go-see interview sheet, a tool for you to use. You can download it and bookmark it. If you need to talk to a lawyer, it'll help prompt on some of these questions that we've been talking about here today, and some of the reflections. I am Jill Bates Moore, one half of Dahlia Law Group.
I'm Allysia Holland, the other half of Dahlia Law Group.
You can find us on our website, www.dahlialawgroup.com, or on Instagram at Dahlia Law. Dahlia is spelled just like the flower, Dahlia. Next week, we will be talking more about the how to hire and how to work with a lawyer conversation, but next week we'll be focused on money. So meet us back here every Wednesday, 12:30 Pacific time. Bring your questions. You can also send us questions on Instagram. You can DM us. You can email us. You can do all of those things. Thank you very, very much. Have a good and safe week. Bye.